Why? Of course, if you believe in Hashem, let him answer, okay. But if you need more rational answers, what are the answers? The Romans had greater legions, Greeks have greater philosophers. Why did they disappear and we are here? Very often am I asked, when I meet people, the Dalai Lama, when he came to see me for the first time, we met in New York for the very first time he came to America. Now he's a friend of my own and myself, very close friend. He said, teach me, your people has left your homeland 2,000 years ago, and you are here still. My people, he said, left his homeland 30 years ago. But I know it's going to be a long exile. What should we do to survive? They want to know, so do we. There wasn't a method used by people, religions, cultures, with one goal only, to expel us from history and to tell us, we don't want you. We don't want you. They tried forced conversion. They tried assimilation. They tried and tried and tried. And here we are. Why? Of course, Mimi speaks about light to the nation. Is this why we are here? To serve as a light to the nation, as an example. What is the example then? I believe that whatever we do, we must somehow give our memory a moral dimension. What is the moral lesson of our being here? In one of my plays, I describe a communist, a Jewish communist, who doesn't want to be Jewish anymore. And he has an argument with his father-in-law, who's a rabbi, the last rabbi then in Russia. And he said, look, I don't want my son to be Jewish. My father suffered as a Jew. My grandfather suffered as a Jew. My great-grandfather as a Jew. My great-great-great-grandfather suffered. I don't want my son to suffer. I want that chain of suffering to stop. And I remember I had a problem. The part was too good. What can you answer a person like that? After the war, I met a few, not many, a few fellow survivors, as we call them, good Jewish people, who said, finished. I know one of them really, who didn't even convert, simply said, finished, changed his name, and his children didn't know that they were Jewish. So I believe, therefore, that our answer is, to be Jewish is not to suffer. It is to find an answer to suffering. That whatever happens, somehow we must answer the event that occurred, for good or bad. Look, I know that you are all, because of what you are doing so marvelously well, so generously, to give, to help others give, and help those who need help. And therefore we think of that person who did such evil. But yesterday we met a small group, and we were so impressed, both Marion and I, with that small group, really. They want to help us, and I believe in gratitude too. In parentheses, I believe a person can be defined by his or her gratitude. I believe, but the one thing, one person said all of a sudden, that he brought shame to the Jewish people, and there I say no. He did bring shame to himself. But to us, why? Let me give you an example. In the 11th century or 12th century, the Ramban, a very famous commentator, one of the greatest that we have, had to go to Barcelona and in a, what we call then disputation. That was done then, you know, disputation with a famous theologian. Who would win? By the way, he won the debate, and therefore he had to run away, and he came to Palestine. Much that we know of the period in Palestine is because of him who had to run to Palestine. Rabbi Yechiel of Paris had the same thing. He was urged, summoned to the cathedral and opposed. And who were their opponents? Jews, converted Jews, converts. Did anyone dare to say, look, they bring shame on our people? I don't think that our people has to be ashamed of anything, except of what we have done or we have not done. I owe you my sincerity and my frankness. The American Jewish community, we live in what we call Galut Shel Chesed, in a very special exile. Never have Jewish families and communities done as well. Living in a symbiosis as now. There was the golden age, but even then, here really, Jews could reach the highest levels of power. A Jewish Supreme Court, members of cabinet. One day we will have a Jewish president simply because we have now, I said it in Washington, since Obama became the first black president, one day our grandchild may come to Washington to witness the inauguration of a Jewish president. It's not to be excluded anymore. Maybe. So therefore, nevertheless, in the past, at least on one occasion, and one and a half, the American Jewish community leadership did not stand up to its mission during the tragedy. I cannot tell you, that hurts me so. I spoke, I remember afterwards in Paris and then later to Jewish leaders who had seen Roosevelt. And I would ask, why didn't you do more? And they simply said, well, what can you do when you are in the Oval Office? You cannot say no to the President of the United States. I must tell you later on, when we were in the White House, and I had to confront Reagan about the Bitburg. And I began my speech, Mr. President, that was April 19, 1985. I began my address as Mr. President, I belong to a tradition that commands me to speak truth to power. One of the reasons why I said no to the president in other occasions, to show almost this, you can't say no to the President of the United States. If you are a Jew and you speak on behalf of your own people, your own memories. They didn't do it. How many mass demonstrations were there? In Madison Square Garden, 1, 2. Second, Russian Jews. I was involved in Russian Jews, in their faith, since 1965. I wrote a book called The Jews of Silence. And I remember I ended it. Now I am concerned, I came back, but I am concerned not so much by the silence of the Jews in Russia, because they are not silent, but by our own silence in America. Abraham Joshua Heschel, Zichrono Livracha, and I would go around at that time, from community to community, from conference to conference, from convention to convention, trying to awake the Jewish community in America. It was impossible at that time. High school kids came to our gatherings, not their parents. Now, what will history say about our generation today? Are we doing what we are supposed to do? What is our moral obligation? There are so many issues. But I know you have questions. I will give you the pleasure of asking the questions, even if I am not answering them. One thing I want you to know, Israel must always be at the center of our preoccupations. If there is a front line, Israel is on the front line.